this is going to be a really hard movie. And I was like, got it.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a live performance suddenly spirals out of control? Michael Jackson was one of the greatest live performers the world had ever seen. He performed for massive crowds across the globe, creating shows that looked almost impossible to pull off. But behind the spectacular lights and choreography, live tours could become dangerous in an instant. Heavy equipment could malfunction above the stage. Pyrotechnics could suddenly ignite, and complex stage mechanisms could stop working without warning. Yet, even when things went wrong, Michael had one priority: keep the performance going. The Munich stage accident. One of the most frightening moments in Michael Jackson's career happened on June 27, 1999, during the Michael Jackson and Friends charity concert in Munich, Germany. During the dramatic finale of Earth Song, Jackson was performing high above the stage when a large elevated platform suddenly malfunctioned. The structure dropped unexpectedly, sending Jackson crashing downward in a terrifying accident. What happened next showed just how much control he had under pressure. Instead of immediately stopping the performance, Jackson managed to get back up and signal for the music to continue. The moment was chaotic, but he pushed through the performance before eventually receiving medical attention. The accident was serious, and Jackson reportedly suffered injuries that added to the physical problems he experienced throughout his career. The unverified chest pain story. There are also stories circulating online about Michael Jackson allegedly experiencing severe chest pain during a performance. According to some claims, he continued performing despite feeling unwell and later collapsed. Some versions of the story even claim that he suffered cardiac arrest and was taken to a hospital. However, these claims have not been reliably confirmed, so they should be treated as unverified rather than established facts. The story continues to circulate, but the question remains, was this a genuine incident, or was the story exaggerated over time? The Pepsi pyrotechnic accident. One of the most famous accidents involving Michael Jackson happened on January 27, 1984, while he was filming a Pepsi commercial at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. During the production, pyrotechnics were used as part of the performance. But during one take, the effects went wrong, and Jackson's hair caught fire. For several terrifying seconds, he continued performing before members of the production crew rushed toward him and extinguished the flames. Jackson suffered serious burns to his scalp and was taken to the hospital for treatment. The accident became a major turning point in his life. Pepsi later reached a settlement with Jackson, and he donated the reported $1.5 million to a medical center focused on treating burn victims. The injuries and their aftermath also contributed to the physical pain Jackson dealt with for years afterward. The 1995 rehearsal collapse. Another frightening incident reportedly occurred in 1995 while Jackson was preparing for his one-night-only television special at New York City's Beacon Theater. The production involved demanding choreography, intense rehearsals, and a physically exhausting schedule. Just days before the planned filming, Jackson reportedly collapsed during rehearsal and fell heavily onto the stage. The incident raised concerns about his physical condition and highlighted the enormous strain that could come with preparing for one of his elaborate performances. For Michael Jackson, the show always had to look perfect. But behind the perfect choreography and spectacular stage effects was a performer who sometimes had to push through moments of extreme physical danger.
Michael, left! Over here! Michael, we don't see you at the left!
The 1995 rehearsal collapse. Witnesses reportedly said Jackson lost consciousness almost immediately after the fall and did not have time to protect himself. Emergency responders quickly took him to Beth Israel Medical Center North, where he was reportedly found to have dangerously low blood pressure. Doctors reportedly diagnosed him with severe dehydration, gastroenteritis, and electrolyte problems, leaving him in serious condition. Jackson remained hospitalized for several days, and with the star unable to perform, the planned HBO production was ultimately canceled. The cancellation turned the project into one of the most notable unfinished Michael Jackson performances. The slippery stage in Moscow. In 1993, Michael Jackson's Dangerous World Tour arrived at Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow, Russia. But the weather created a major problem. Cold autumn rain had left the outdoor stage extremely wet, making the performance surface difficult and potentially dangerous. When Jackson began performing Jam, the slippery floor made some of his signature movements much harder to execute. At one point, his glasses even flew off as he struggled to maintain his balance. Instead of stopping the show, Jackson continued performing. The situation became so difficult that stagehands eventually rushed onto the platform with towels and mops, trying to dry the surface while the concert was still underway. Despite the freezing conditions and dangerous stage, Jackson managed to continue the performance. That Moscow experience would later become part of the atmosphere surrounding his song, Stranger in Moscow, which reflected a much darker and more isolated side of his life. The Dangerous Tour stage mechanism. Michael Jackson's Dangerous World Tour also featured one of the most complicated opening stage illusions of his career. The famous entrance depended on a mechanical launch system that suddenly sent Jackson upward onto the stage. But during one performance at Wembley Stadium in London, the mechanism reportedly malfunctioned. Instead of completing the planned movement, the hydraulic system became stuck, leaving Jackson trapped in an awkward position while tens of thousands of fans watched. The production team had to react quickly. The stadium lights were reportedly cut, giving technicians a brief opportunity to work on the malfunctioning equipment and safely free Jackson. Once the problem was resolved, Jackson returned to the stage. And rather than allowing the accident to ruin the show, he went straight back into the performance as if nothing had happened. The 1997 crane malfunction. Another dangerous situation reportedly occurred during the History World Tour in Germany. But after one sequence, the hydraulic system reportedly locked, leaving Jackson suspended in the air instead of returning him to the correct position. Technicians immediately began working to release the mechanism. They eventually managed to lower the platform safely, bringing Jackson back toward the stage. Throughout the incident, Jackson reportedly remained calm and continued acknowledging the audience. For a performer known for perfectly controlled shows, these accidents revealed something else about Michael Jackson. When the technology failed, the performer didn't. Scream starts in silence. During one of Michael Jackson's History World Tour concerts in Gothenburg, Sweden, the opening of Scream didn't go as planned. The song was supposed to explode into the performance with powerful music and energy. But when the moment arrived, the backing track failed to start properly, while Jackson's microphone also appeared to remain silent during the opening. Instead of the explosive beginning fans were expecting, the stadium was left with several uncomfortable seconds of silence. It was an awkward technical failure, but Jackson and the production team eventually managed to get everything working again. Once the problem was fixed, the concert continued normally, turning what could have been a disastrous opening into one of the tour's more memorable technical mishaps. The fan on the crane. On October 13, 1996, during the History World Tour at Seoul Olympic Stadium, Michael Jackson performed Earth Song while elevated high above the audience on a large hydraulic structure. Then something unexpected happened. A fan reportedly managed to get past security and climb onto part of the crane structure. The situation was extremely dangerous. At that height, one wrong movement could have caused the fan to fall. Jackson appeared to recognize the danger immediately. Rather than trying to force the fan away, he held onto him to help keep him secure while the security team worked to reach them. For more than 2 minutes, Jackson remained there, continuing the performance while keeping the fan from making a dangerous move. Eventually, the platform was lowered and security personnel were able to remove the man. Jackson then returned to the stage and continued the concert. When the backing track disappeared, another technical problem reportedly occurred during Michael Jackson's New Year's Eve performance in Brunei in 1996. The opening of Scream depended heavily on perfectly synchronized music, vocals, and stage effects. The backing music began normally, but there was a problem with the pre-recorded lead vocals. Instead of stopping the performance and waiting for the sound crew to fix the problem, Jackson adapted immediately. He switched to singing the vocals himself through his live microphone, carrying the opening section until the pre-recorded track returned. To the audience, what could have been an obvious technical failure became another example of Jackson's ability to react quickly when something went wrong. The anti-gravity lean goes wrong. Michael Jackson's famous anti-gravity lean was one of the most recognizable illusions in his performances. During the History World Tour, he appeared to lean dramatically forward at an angle that seemed almost physically impossible. But the trick wasn't simply about balance. Jackson's specially designed shoes contained a mechanism that allowed them to connect with a specially designed peg in the stage. When everything worked perfectly, the shoes locked into position and allowed Jackson to perform the famous lean. But there was a problem. If the timing was even slightly off, the heel mechanism might not lock into the stage correctly. And when that happened, the illusion could become a very real and potentially dangerous mistake. When the anti-gravity trick nearly failed. When the mechanism failed to lock properly, the illusion could disappear in a split second. Jackson had to react quickly and regain his balance before the mistake turned into a serious fall. For the audience, it could look like nothing more than a tiny movement during the choreography. But behind that moment was a potentially dangerous situation. Thousands of people may have watched without realizing just how close the performance could have come to going wrong. The Bangkok concert cancellation. Not every dangerous moment happened on stage. During Michael Jackson's 1993 Dangerous World Tour, one scheduled concert in Bangkok, Thailand, had to be cancelled after Jackson became seriously unwell shortly before the performance. He was reportedly suffering from severe dehydration and required medical treatment. The news was devastating for fans who had gathered expecting to see the King of Pop perform. But the incident also revealed the enormous physical demands Jackson was facing during the tour. The Dangerous World Tour had already taken him around the world, with demanding performances, constant travel, rehearsals, and intense media attention. As the tour continued, the pressure began taking a serious toll on him physically and emotionally. Later that year, Jackson publicly acknowledged his dependence on pain medication and entered treatment. For someone whose career depended on being able to perform at the highest level every night, it was a sign that the pressure behind the spotlight had become almost impossible to ignore.
As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remained out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication.
The Dangerous World Tour comes to an end. The physical and emotional strain of the Dangerous World Tour eventually became too much. In November 1993, the remaining dates of the tour were cancelled, bringing the massive global production to an early end. For fans, it was disappointing. But for Jackson, it was a sign that his health had to come before the show. The microphone stand problem. Sometimes, the biggest problems on stage weren't massive accidents at all. During one performance, Jackson was moving through a tightly choreographed routine when a microphone stand suddenly became a problem. Instead of staying exactly where it was supposed to, the equipment interfered with his movements and threatened to disrupt the choreography. For a few moments, Jackson appeared visibly frustrated as he tried to deal with the stubborn equipment. But he didn't stop the performance. He adjusted his movements, worked around the problem, and continued with the routine. To the audience, it was just another moment in the show. But once again, Jackson had turned an unexpected technical problem into something the performance could survive. The boxer was fired, internet rumor. A technical mishap during a 1996 concert in Brunei later became the source of an unusual internet rumor. While Jackson was performing I Just Can't Stop Loving You, the audio system reportedly encountered a problem and continued playing when the performance was supposed to move on to the next song. Jackson reacted by improvising and addressing his musical director, Brad Buxer. Over time, the moment was exaggerated online, with some versions claiming Jackson had fired Buxer on stage. But that story isn't supported by what happened afterward. Buxer continued working with Jackson and remained an important part of his musical team during the History era. So what looked like a dramatic backstage conflict was actually just another example of Jackson improvising when technology didn't cooperate. The Thriller rehearsal problem. Even Michael Jackson's most famous routines weren't immune to technical problems. Thriller depended on precise choreography, lighting cues, sound effects, costumes, and perfectly timed movements. During one reported rehearsal problem, a technical failure disrupted the lighting and audio, creating a sudden blackout during the routine. 4 dancers performing in elaborate costumes and masks, losing visibility in the middle of a complicated sequence could have been extremely dangerous. Everything had been rehearsed to the second. But live productions don't always follow the script. And that was one of the biggest challenges Michael Jackson faced throughout his career, making thousands of moving parts work perfectly while performing in front of an audience. When something failed, he had only one choice: adapt instantly, stay calm, and keep the show alive.
Go. Yeah. Right. Your preparation. You should just be coming off the left foot.
The Thriller Blackout. Thriller, written by Rod Temperton and featuring the iconic narration of Vincent Price, became one of Michael Jackson's most recognizable performances. But even a routine that had been rehearsed countless times could be threatened by a technical failure. During one reported incident, the lighting and backing systems suddenly went down, leaving the stage in darkness. With dancers depending on precise cues and visibility, the blackout could have completely disrupted the performance. Jackson, however, remained in control. He continued guiding the performers through the routine using vocal cues and his own timing until the technical systems were restored. Even when the stage went completely dark, Jackson managed to keep the performance moving. The Smooth Criminal stage hazard. Michael Jackson's performances of Smooth Criminal were famous for their precise choreography, dramatic staging, and seemingly impossible movements. But one reported incident created a very different kind of danger. During a performance, a concealed section of the stage reportedly opened earlier than expected while Jackson was moving across the set. Suddenly, there was an unexpected gap directly in his path. Jackson reacted almost instantly. Instead of freezing or losing his rhythm, he quickly jumped over the opening and continued the choreography. For the audience, the movement could easily have looked like part of the routine. But if the opening had caught him at the wrong moment, the consequences could have been far more serious. Once again, Jackson's ability to react in a split second helped prevent a technical malfunction from turning into a major stage accident.
Okay, here we go. Places, please, everyone. Very nice. Nice work. Nice work.
The Super Bowl technical glitch. Michael Jackson's 1993 Super Bowl halftime performance became one of the most memorable halftime shows in television history. But behind the legendary entrance was a complicated technical operation. Jackson's dramatic appearance depended on stage mechanisms working perfectly. Any failure could have disrupted the entire surprise. During the preparations, a technical problem reportedly affected one of the mechanisms beneath the stage. While the production crew worked to resolve the issue, Jackson remained in position, waiting for his cue. Then the system finally engaged. Jackson emerged onto the stage and stood completely still for an extended moment. The audience erupted. What looked like an incredibly confident and deliberate entrance was also a demonstration of Jackson's remarkable ability to remain composed under pressure. Instead of allowing the technical problems backstage to affect his performance, he turned the tension into part of the spectacle. The result became one of the most iconic halftime entrances ever seen on television. The Dangerous Tour Ignition. The opening of Michael Jackson's Dangerous World Tour was built around one of the most dramatic entrances in concert history. The performance relied on a complicated combination of mechanical systems, precise timing, lighting, and pyrotechnics. Jackson would appear almost frozen before suddenly launching into the performance. But with so many systems working simultaneously, even a small technical problem could threaten the entire opening sequence. The transition from Jackson's motionless pose into the explosive choreography had to happen at exactly the right moment. If the timing was off, the entire illusion could fall apart. Yet once again, Jackson's performances showed why he was considered such a master of the live stage. Even when complicated technology threatened to interfere, he remained focused on one thing: keep the audience believing that everything is under control. The Dangerous Tour pyrotechnic failure. During a 1992 Dangerous World Tour performance, the pyrotechnics reportedly failed to fire at the moment they were supposed to explode into action. Instead of a dramatic burst of light and sound, the stage was left unexpectedly dark. Jackson didn't wait for the technicians to solve the problem. He immediately began the opening choreography and continued performing while signaling the band to keep the music moving. What should have been a spectacular pyrotechnic entrance became a moment of pure improvisation. And because Jackson reacted so quickly, most of the audience could simply see it as part of the performance. The Earth Song rehearsal. During rehearsals for this in 2009, Jackson was preparing for the massive production planned around Earth Song. The performance involved large mechanical structures and complicated stage equipment. According to the account in the script, one of the mechanisms experienced a malfunction during rehearsal, forcing the technical crew to intervene. Rather than panicking, Jackson remained focused and continued working with the team while the equipment was being checked. The sequence was designed to become one of the emotional highlights of the show. But it also demonstrated the risks involved in building a concert around huge moving structures, especially when every mechanical movement had to be perfectly synchronized. The Bad Tour Blackout. Michael Jackson's Bad World Tour was filled with dramatic lighting effects, fast choreography, and elaborate stage transitions. But during one performance, a lighting problem reportedly left the stage darker than intended. Jackson and his dancers had to continue performing with extremely limited visibility. Without being able to clearly see every part of the stage, Jackson relied on memory, timing, and rehearsal to maintain his position. When the lights finally returned, he was exactly where he needed to be. What could have become a dangerous mistake instead looked like a perfectly controlled part of the performance. The 1995 MTV Video Music Awards audio problem. At the 1995 MTV Video Music Awards, Jackson delivered an extended performance packed with choreography, music, and rapid transitions. But live television leaves no room for technical mistakes. During the performance, a problem reportedly affected his wireless microphone system. Instead of stopping or drawing attention to the failure, Jackson quickly adapted and continued the routine. He transitioned to another microphone and kept moving without allowing the technical problem to disrupt the performance. Millions of viewers saw a polished performance. They didn't necessarily see the split-second decisions happening behind it. The Billie Jean silence. One of Michael Jackson's most memorable performances of Billie Jean reportedly involved something completely unexpected. Silence. During the famous opening of the song, a technical problem interrupted the music. Jackson remained completely still, holding his signature pose while the audience waited. Instead of breaking character or showing panic, he used the silence to build anticipation. Then, the music finally returned. The moment Jackson launched into the choreography, the crowd erupted. What began as a technical problem became a dramatic pause that made the entrance feel even more powerful. The black or white screen failure. During the History World Tour, performances of Black or White depended on complex video screens, lighting systems, and stage cues. During one reported technical failure, the video system malfunctioned and the visuals were disrupted. Rather than allowing the problem to stop the performance, Jackson shifted his focus toward the part of the stage where the available lighting was still working. He continued performing and kept the audience focused on him while the technical crew worked behind the scenes. That was one of Jackson's greatest strengths as a live performer. When something went wrong, he didn't necessarily fight the mistake. He adapted to it. And sometimes, the audience never even realized there had been a problem. Final thoughts. Michael Jackson's live performances looked almost effortless. But behind every perfect dance move were complicated machines, lighting systems, microphones, pyrotechnics, hydraulic platforms, and dozens of people working simultaneously. When one of those pieces failed, Jackson had only seconds to react. And that's what made these moments so remarkable. He didn't just perform when everything went according to plan. He knew how to keep performing when nothing went according to plan. So, which of these stage mishaps surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look at Michael Jackson's most unexpected live performance moments, subscribe for more music history and behind-the-scenes stories.